how would you like to make your first million? And we have today a tech entrepreneur that I have the privilege to know him personally. And his name is Sanjay Bhatia, and he is the founder of Ronde AI. So, Sanjay, tell us, what are the 5 steps that you recommend entrepreneurs in order to make the first million?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
The first step to me is really to focus. We have this mindset in the world where, they say the average millionaire has 7 streams of income, but the reality is they built that much later in their careers. And I see, especially with, Gen Z entrepreneurs, is they want to do, they're hustling, they're grinding, they're doing so many different things, and it's not ever going to work, right? Like Alex Ramosi kind of said this, hey, remember that guy that did drop shipping plus real estate plus crypto plus this and that and that. It's like, no, neither do I. No one remembers that guy because he like you said, like a lot of businesses fail in the first 2 years. Well, the ones that multitask are the ones that fail the most. So one is really, focus without getting distracted. Like really choose. You may not know your product market fit early, right? But focus on this business, and this is the business you're gonna make your first million with, and focus in a way where I say it's a decade commitment, right? The joke is that the average exit is now 11 years. That's from an investment to, the investors selling the company getting a return. But the average marriage is 7 years. So you'll be with your investors longer than you're likely to be married statistically. And so if you're not willing to commit a decade to something, then it's not it, right? Find something that you will commit to because you're going to go through a lot of ups and downs. So firstly, it's a focus. Secondly is build a team. Now, you can't always afford a team at first, but there's ways to get advisors, give them some equity, friends, family members, commission salespeople. There's all kinds of ways to really, teamwork makes the dream work. Like you're not going to ever have the full skill set for any business. You look at the media portrays this sort of narrative that like entrepreneurs are these heroic, like solo figures, like in the movies, right? It's not reality. You look at, whoever, Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or any of these people, they're the face of the brand, right? They're representing tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of very talented, dedicated, and contributing individuals. They're just representing the brand as a face, and they might be the founder as well. Like Tim Cook wasn't the founder, but he's the face of the brand. And so don't get lost in the way things are presented on the screen and by the media. Like teamwork makes the dream work. So secondly, you have to build a team, or at least have the team identified. Like also investors, for if you're a first time entrepreneur and you're going for investment, then the team slide is the most important slide. Yeah, they want a big TAM, they want, to see kind of the traction, everything, but they're really seeing like, hey, have you been able to at least convince a set of people to follow your lead? And if you haven't, they know that the odds of your success are very low. And not that it never happens, but it rarely happens. And people who can lead a team are the ones who are kind of win in a competitive situation. Thirdly, I would say start with a problem you yourself have. Like even with Runday, I think I started with one problem that I had at my previous venture, and then I ended up with a problem I had kind of selling that. You look at like Uber, you look at a lot of these companies, Slack. It wasn't their first idea, right? Like they just were in some kind of business, which didn't work out in the end, and they ran into some problem, and they started solving that problem for themselves. That ultimately resulted in them building, in some cases, billion-dollar or multi-million-dollar businesses. So make sure you understand the problem that you really feel like, hey, I want a world where I don't have this problem. Once you've, focused and built the team and, kind of found a problem that you're having you can identify with, then I think to me, it's like, you look at the market. Like, is it a big enough market? there's only so many teapot repair people in the world. Like if you have software for teapot repair people, it's gonna be hard to find them, right? Make sure there's lists available. Make sure that you check the SEO, the SEM, how much are ads? Do you need to be a member? Do you need to have a booth at an event that's $50,000 a booth just to even try? Like some healthcare situations to get your first customer. If you don't have a booth at some of these big conferences, you just don't really have a chance. So, what is that like? How competitive is it to get into this industry? Look at the market, look at the competitors. There's some great markets that are highly competitive. There's lousy markets that are highly competitive too. So you want this combination of, big enough market. It's more important it's growing. So it doesn't have to be a market. Like if you looked at Agentic AI 3 years ago, there was no market. And it's going to explode to a, $1 trillion market in the foreseeable future. So it doesn't have to be a market that's there today, but it's a market that's growing fast that will has the potential to be a big market. And
So,
so
Sanjay,
when
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, I was gonna say once you have your big market, then the final step is really just and I alluded to this early in the process. It's not just focus, but commit to the customer. We hear about sales-led growth versus product-led growth. To me, if you're in Silicon Valley and you can raise $50 million on something that's likely to fail, then have at it. But if you really want, if you're building a succeed something that will enrich you, not just the investors, but also you're not trying to take 95 to 5 odds, then really kind of make sure that you're committed to this thing for the long run in a way that's compatible with committing the customers, getting them successful.
So, Sanjay, out of the 500 millionaires that we interview in this podcast, one out of five are tech millionaires, tech entrepreneurs. Our listeners might be thinking that becoming a millionaire in tech is easy. Can you tell us, because you have been in this several times, can you tell us what is the good, the bad, and the ugly of tech entrepreneur? Because already you just shared it, right? It's going to take 11 years in some cases. So one thing is to listen to success story like yours or other hundreds of tech entrepreneurs that have been in this podcast, that are tech millionaires. But really, what is it gonna take? What is the good, the bad, and the ugly? Let's give it a take off here.
Well, I would say it's not necessarily easy, but it's easier than ever. It's much easier to, and this company was much easier to get, make that first million than my first company took years. It took years and years, like almost, more than half a decade. So it's easier than ever, but it's also easier than ever to get distracted. So that's kind of the thing of it is it's going to require commitment. Like, can you commit for a decade plus if it's required, and not get distracted with traveling the world or spending that initial money you make, or like getting into too many hobbies, or whatever you can spend money on. There's so many distractions. There's more than ever, but there's also more opportunity than ever. So it's easier than ever, even if it may not be easy. I think it's something, it goes down to the 10-year rule to me. Like, when I started Runday, I did well with previous exits and I didn't have to work. And I realized I could do whatever I wanted. And so I chose something where I enjoy just events I'm going at, even I'm just like sitting at a bar, someone sitting next to me. I like being able to help somebody who I can run into it, like a fellow business owner at, cigar lounges, or, just traveling, whatever it is. I like that. And a lot of the early customers and people and even employees were people I just sat next to them, or I just met them at an event. And so I like and some of my other ventures had been a lot more specialized. The last one, we did Fit Match, where we use LiDAR technology to do sizing. And, that's an incredible product. And everyone has the problem of sizing, the sizing their clothes, but it's only like a select group of like, very large retailers that we were, where you're not likely to sit down next to one that has a 9-figure retail brand. Right. So I wanted something where I could just go do my thing, and it just started working out. I just started like running into people that were excited about the idea. I started a podcast with as well. So just inviting people to the podcast is a good way to get to know them in more detail, just like this one. And so I think it's really about, for me, Like if it was this time around, it was choosing something that I enjoy doing if I don't have to do anything at all.
So tell us about your company then.
Yeah, so Runday
What
is
it's about and what's the story? Why you decided to start it?
Yeah, so Runday is an AI brand ambassador, and it's a product expert on your brand and your products and services. But the most important thing it does is it does outreach to your ideal clients. And so we're working with TV shows, we're working with marketing agencies, we're working with cars, we're working with all kinds of stuff. It's more high ticket items. But rather than advertising and hoping the right people show up, we're really an alternative to Google and Meta ads, where we are a data-driven approach. We already have the ability to find these individuals and have the AI have conversations with them in a hyper personalized way that knows who they are ahead of time. And the end result is that it books calendars on a salesperson's, appointments on a salesperson's calendar. So it does 100 little things. We have patents that predate ChatGPT, but we think of it as an army of interns, right? If you had 20, 30 interns and you were going to have them help you with your business, what would you have them do? Probably 100 little things. So we've trained the AI on 100 little things that it does, looking at calendars, looking at lists, like looking at, just looking at everyone's website. Like, hey, are they a good fit for this offer that I'm having right now? Maybe they're not. Maybe next month's offer is better. Maybe they're not a fit at all. So it's like a lot of little things that we do. It's called revenue orchestration. But the net result was that starting in August 7th of last year, it filled every single 30-minute slot of my calendar with not just a meeting, but a qualified meeting with somebody that was ready to do business with somebody. It might not have been me, but they were ready to expand into something. They had budget, they had an immediate need. The way it started was I'm a free diver and I like to ride electric bikes. And so I was shopping for a mask one day. And so Smacko makes these masks where on one side there's a mini tank. So it's like a scuba tank, but it's small on one side. And the other side is a traditional snorkel. So you can be at the top of the water, snorkel, dive, free dive a little bit. And then when you see, oh my God, look at there's this beautiful angelfish, or I want to pet this shark, whatever it is, you can just breathe and use the oxygen in the tank and stay down there for several minutes and hang out and have that experience. And then, when you're done, you go back to the top. And so I was looking for this mask and I added it to my cart. I gave him my information already and I was about to buy it. And at the last minute, I realized, wait a minute, how am I going to pump this thing? And so I asked a question of their chatbot and I said, hey, I have electric bike pumps. Could I use that to pump this? And it just stalled, right? It didn't answer the question. I waited for an email. They never emailed me. I emailed them, nothing for days and days and days. So I just thought that was really strange. This was right after COVID. And so I thought, wait, why wouldn't they answer my question and also upsell me on their pump technology, which I needed because these tanks require 4,500 PSI and my bike pumps are only 100. And so I was just like, this is strange to me. And so I tested over 100 other brands and found that 97% of the time after COVID, you could not get a question answered within 24 hours. And so I
Oh
saw this had
wow.
become a huge problem.
Oh wow. That's
And so,
fantastic.
yeah, so initially we created a product expert that could answer these late stage buyer questions, got some initial customers.
Before ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, this was initially, we were working with OpenAI. They had a beta API. We were one of the first companies in the world on it, but
Oh
this was
wow.
before ChatGPT. We developed it out, and then we filed our patents, which are related to calendaring and spreadsheets and making those things work together in a certain way for, booking qualified appointments. We filed those patents. Like I looked at it like a year later. I was like, oh my God, that was like 2 days before ChatGPT came out. So we had very good timing on it.
Oh, fantastic. So, Sanjay, the my other question is regarding the process of the tech entrepreneurs because sometimes they are with this AI revolution that we have right now. We think that uh, how important is branding, sales, and marketing?
Mhm.
in all these ecosystem of tech. Before, if you want to have a tech pros, you need to hire engineers and cost a lot of money to create an MVP, and if and funds were located to that, and so they companies have less resources for sales, marketing, and branding. Well, it seems that now with the use of AI, anybody can create an MVP really uh, cheap or photo, and now it's more about sales, marketing, and branding that actually refining the product. The product can be refined exactly what you said about Slack and all those companies that they never even develop the initial product that they want because they have to pivot and pivot and pivot. So what's your view? How sales, marketing, and branding are taking protagonism in the tech space, or do you think that that still, which is actually more than traditional business, is heading on to the same that the more we see, the more it's similar to traditional businesses. So, what is your opinion on this?
So I would say first, this idea that you don't have to hire an engineering team is completely false. The code that AI generates is not scalable, it's not secure. You've seen, a bunch of apps that went viral lately and
We'll
fell
get you
apart
only to an
when
MVP, to an MVP kind of that works and do something, right?
but I wouldn't even call it MVP. I think what AI is really good at is test marketing. So what you should use AI for is not to build an MVP. Don't do that. Now, if you do have an engineering team and they're leveraging AI, they're going to do that better. But this idea that non-technical engineers can build a MVP, it's still maybe 10 years from now it'll be possible, but it's a fantasy. It's either fantasy or the other way you're looking at it is if you can do that, so can everyone else. So you have no moat, right? So everyone like that you see all these YouTube videos, oh, make $10,000 a day with ChatGPT. Well, if you can do it, so can everyone else. And then, the 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 profit goes to zero. It's a race to the bottom. So maybe you can make an MVP with vibe coding, right? But so can everyone else. So it's a race to the bottom. That's not a game worth playing. What is worth playing, which has become possible with AI, using Runday or using, other tools and technologies, you can almost create a dozen different products and create the websites, create the sign up forms, create some ads, test a dozen products, and then see which one performs the best. So market testing has become a lot easier with AI. I wouldn't say development is really, it's yes, it's easier for an experienced development team, but that's still a huge investment to do more faster and better with AI. But you can't. It's not a replacement at all. But if you want to say, hey, I have this idea, the best example of this is I think Dropbox. And this was ages ago. Now they're a multi-billion dollar company. When Dropbox first launched, they didn't have any funding. They couldn't hire engineers. They instead spent their initial capital on creating a really nice video of how to use Dropbox. So created a fake video, which now is even easier to create with AI. So they created these hired graphic designers or whoever to create a fake video of how to use Dropbox. Like, here's what it looks like. Here's what you click, blah, blah. So they put up a video. They put up a sign up list. They got whatever the number was, 200,000 people on their waiting list. They went to investors with that list, raised capital, and then they were able to hire their engineering team. So I think you can do a lot of things like that, where you say, okay, let me create 20 products, 20
Agree.
websites, vibe
I
coding,
agree.
create ads, use Runday, maybe like do some test marketing, do a bunch of campaigns, and then see what performs, and then see what's the best way to create the MVP of that. So you can almost bypass the MVP by test marketing. I'll call it a throwaway concept, or almost like not. It's not even prototype. It's really just the marketing collateral. So you can create the marketing collateral with AI of a lot of ideas, and then see what the questions are, see what the feedback is. If you see people buy something, of course, don't charge them if it doesn't exist, but there's ways to kind of get interest intent from the marketplace that let you figure out how to focus, saving you, 1, maybe 2 or 3 years of R&D and a lot of costs.
Sanjay, can you share your story? Why you decide to become an entrepreneur?
I mean, I have in my blood, my parents are entrepreneurs. And I think I used to work at Microsoft after rating systems. I think I thought my story would be that, okay, I'd go to Microsoft, work for 5, 10, 15 years, and then, build up some capital and get some, get some colleagues from there and go start a business. And my plan was to potentially do it that way, but to be a corporate, a corporate type for a while in my early life. But September 11th happened. I was part of a company. They laid off, there's talk about layoffs right now, and I think it's kind of funny. People are laying off like 2%, 5%. Intel did a real layoff, but other than that, like there's been very few layoffs, right? In my opinion. But back then, companies were laying off like 25, 50, in my case, 75% of the company. And so, I was laid off and, we kind of went to grad school, traveled the world. But at some point I was like, okay, I gotta do something with my life again. And there were no jobs for a long time. So it wasn't like now where, okay, get laid off from $1 trillion company, just go to $1 billion company. There was nothing. So I went from working at these top tier companies to zero jobs for years and years. So then, I just started doing, one day I just got on a contractor site and I became a subcontractor for another firm that had a project with the Georgia State Parks, did that, started doing other projects. Eventually I realized that there was a lot of need for reporting. At the time, Microsoft reporting system services, now it's Power BI, but there was a need for people to run reports, and developers always were too busy to do it and they didn't want to do it. They didn't really know how to do it, but they really one was with the password. So it's like, so how, without having the password to the database, how can I get someone like a safe visualization of the data? And so, I created that as my first product, partnered with Microsoft, later raised venture capital and, expanded the business.
So, and then Sanjay, what is your message for entrepreneurs that people in corporate that want to do the transition to become an entrepreneur? Because when you're in corporate, I mean, you can tell people, somebody from us ask you, and you do this, you can tell them, look, this is not my job. But when you're an entrepreneur, everything's changing. So, what, what have been the biggest challenge in the transition from corporate to entrepreneur?
So it's a tough one. So in the Tony Robbins Business Mastery, they were kind of teaching like if you're in that situation, like keep one foot in one place while until you have firm holding in the next. I think the idea that if you build businesses before, it's different, right? Or if you've been part of startups and you understand the vibe, the energy, what it takes. If you've had that experience is one thing. But if you've been like, I call corporate life a fantasy life because your whole reality was made up by people on whiteboards, right? It may not be your fantasy, but it's somebody's fantasy. So when you're in corporate world, you're in this bubble where everything you see and experience, the credibility of your title and your brand, like that's all been created for you, right? Like when you go from, say, you're whatever VP of a division, every door is open. These vendors are talking to you. They're doing everything it takes to get in front of you, right? The second you switch that business card for CEO of startup, no one's going to talk to you, right? So that's a shock to the system for a lot of people. Like when they lose, they're used to having this brand behind them. When you no longer have that, you're building a brand. It's a different story. You really shouldn't even build a brand in most cases because it's very difficult to do it. At least at first, like it's really got to build that customer base first before you build your brand. So I think realize it's going to take longer than you think. If it's a financial thing where you're like, okay, I gotta, I'm gonna do this thing and I'll put ads on a credit card and then get a customer in 30 days and pay the credit card back. Like definitely if you're that guy, don't do it, right? Like I hear that story all the time because you're competing with people with brands. And so, you don't want to do that. So really, stay with your, and then the other thing is build a team, right? So you with a team of people who also have jobs, at least a stable livelihood, then do that. Now, you got a rich uncle that'll fund you, then that's another, or if you can get an SBA loan, and do like a franchise. There's other ways that are interesting, right? But if it's something that's a new business where it's risky and you haven't done this before, perhaps no one's ever done this before, you have to step into that very carefully. Often you can turn your employer into a customer, right? So just maybe like become a consultant, make your employer one of your clients. That way, at least you have a business with some consulting revenue coming in, which is what I did, at my, before we had our first product at Izenda, it was a consulting company. So I built a consulting company, got my first, uh, not job, but like big account. I got them to be a client, added some more clients to it, some with their help, some, and then I started doing my own marketing. So, I had a number of clients paying the bills. I'd built a team, I had people doing the work, and then I started dabbling into a product, which worked because now we could sell the product to customers we already have that trusted us.
So then, Sanjay, what message do you have for the young entrepreneurs right now that they are listening to this podcast and they see hundreds of entrepreneurs like you that have been in tech and have exited and executed again? We have several people in this podcast that have been saying like you know, first time founder is like second time founder, third time founder, and then yeah, it's easy when it's your second and the third. Especially if
Yeah,
you
like
have
I've invested
a
in
tool like
second. I've
AI.
been investing in. Well, I mean, I
Yeah.
invest as well. So I really like seeing when it's a second or third time entrepreneur where they've built profitable businesses, even if they weren't like big businesses, like at least they've had that experience of running a profitable business that they've grown. I love hiring people like that, investing in people like that. And because like, you're not going to make those first time mistakes. When it is your first time, that's when you really need to have a good advisory board, have good partners, have people with some experience, either in the industry or with entrepreneurship on your team.
And we have the also uh, facing. I'm actually launching an incubator because we have for one side the founders that they are those first time founders that they're
Mhm.
very passionate about the product and they are just talking about how amazing is the product and how the product's gonna make the world a better place, how
Yeah.
the product is amazing and my product is, but we don't judge them because we all been first time founder once and we become very product centric, very product lover. Whether on the other hand, the investor is wondering another question like how you gonna sell it? What is gonna be my return? Is this actually uh, this product is gonna solve the problem? Because until somebody pays and uses it, uh, it doesn't it's not fit for the market. And then we have a huge gap and you because first time founders and the investor. So any tips how can we close this gap? It's like they're speaking
Join.
different language. They're speaking in different language.
Yeah.
They
So with
are
with the with the investors, it depends on what stage they're on, right? So angel investors are looking to get in until a seed or a Series A investor comes in. That's a lot of times they get out at that stage. So everyone has an outcome. And if you're just talking about the features of your product, and I'm a builder, I'm a feature guy, so I'm guilty of doing this. And it used to work, right? There was even my last business, there was a time when the specs, the accuracy, the performance was what you led with. I don't think we're in that world right now. We're in a sales driven world where people that built good sales teams, some of them don't even have a product yet, and they can outcompete you if you're focused on features. So you got to focus on what is the benefit for the customer, right? So it's not sales driven, it's not product driven today, it's customer driven growth. Like, be your own first customer, and if you can go to investors and you can show, with testimonials, use cases, whatever, that you're really solving a problem for those customers, they'll understand that because they've probably invested in that something like that before, but it makes sense. So you have to be able to understand what you're doing for the customer. I think some of the VC things like, okay, it's $1 trillion TAM and, like we have this moat, like OpenAI has no moat, right? Like one of the largest, businesses in the world right now, and they've admitted this. It's not my words, not my opinion. Sam Altman has said that. It's like they were saying, I think it was Google has no moat, but neither do we, right? So some of these things that are like typically a cornerstone of investment don't apply anymore or don't apply right now. Maybe they will, they probably will again in the future, but you got to look at where you are right now. As a first-time entrepreneur, you actually have an advantage because nobody, you know, and I've done AI in all my businesses in some way, but like this is my first like AI first company, right? So while I've had several AI companies, I've never had an AI first company before, right? So I'm having to figure things out in an AI first company, and so is everyone else. So you have an advantage, one of which is, we're seeing startups run by first-time founders selling to Fortune 500 and Global 2000 companies. I've never seen that before in my life.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I
pretty,
mean,
pretty
we had
impressive.
customers like Ford, Procter and Gamble early in our journey, right? That's never happened before. It usually took years and years and years to get these big accounts. But
Absolutely.
because AI is so new and people have FOMO, big companies are willing to partner with startups right now, and that's one of the biggest benefits of
Wow.
first time founders
Very
today.
impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then
I've
the,
never seen that before.
yeah, crazy. Uh, then, Sanjay, the other thing we want to address is we see more family offices now
Hmm.
leaning on to invest in tech. I think they usually come from real estate, which is very traditional business,
Hmm.
but now they see that there have been a big transfer of wealth from generation to generation, and now
Yeah,
before it was the grandfather, now have the father, now they have the son, now it's the son of the son, the nephews, and those ones that coming more open mind and more receptive to tech. However, because they have the legacy of family office, they want to see revenue, they want to see EBITDA, they want to see profit. They think different, like this VC that it was a time that maybe you have a piece of paper, an idea, and they will give you just money or with something very, very tiny. So
right.
what is the difference have you seen between family offices investing in tech and the traditional VC model?
Well, with VCs, there's tiers. And so you have the top tier VCs, right? And they're investing in OpenAI and Anthropic and writing very large checks. And so if you can't consume that, the more money you raise, the easier it is. Because the way the VC says it, like if I write, one check for $50 billion, that's the same amount of work as writing 10 checks for $5 billion or, whatever number of checks for $5 million. Right. So they'd much rather write bigger checks. And that's where it's skewing. So you have the top tier VCs, they get invited to they're in the club, they get invited to these bigger deals that are, a little bit, not a sure thing, but they're more established companies that have more certain futures. So at the early stage, it's become more and more difficult. And really what's happened is the VCs they've done more of a spray and pray approach. And from what I've seen, it hasn't worked very well. It's kind of like it hasn't worked for the VC and it hasn't really worked for the founder either. So I mean, I've had two conversations this week with founders that, they're raising capital, but they've told me, I don't want to talk to a VC. If you have any family offices or individuals that want to invest, like connect me with them. But some founders who have been burnt by VCs are like not wanting to do anything. So I've heard that twice this week. Like I don't even want money from a VC. So VCs have these tiers, and at the where VC works, they're writing 9-figure, 10-figure checks, right? So that part of the VC ecosystem is very healthy, very thriving. But as you go downward to the smaller checks, the big guys just don't want to wait. They just don't have time. And so what you're seeing is a lot of these VCs are just, I mean, they're just junior analysts that have never run a business. They're not entrepreneurs. So, I think that first time founder combined with a first time VC who, maybe his dad got him the job or he went to the right school, but they're not a VC because they made money, right? They're just a VC because they got hired. And so I think that part of the world really is a little bit of a mess right now. And even with entrepreneurs just saying, look, I've had a VC last time. I don't want to do it again. And so you're seeing, as a result of that, you're seeing family offices have more and more deal flow. So the family offices are like, well, why would I invest in a VC who takes a cut and, truth be told, may not have the best returns, or that industry may not have the best returns on these smaller checks. I think I can add value by just doing it myself. And so a lot of family offices have, hired CIOs that are, good at doing managing deal flow and investing in companies directly. You're seeing, I think one survey I saw from one of the investment groups showing the majority of the capital in tech is now going directly instead of through a VC.
So, what is your message for uh, the investors? Like, for example, you said that you also invest. So, as an investor, right? What are you expecting to see from a startup technology? So our entrepreneurs listening in the shop, our tech founders have an idea what they have to be ready, or what things need to be. Because I always said, okay, don't look for investor if you're not ready yet. There is a lot of
Right.
homework that needs to be done. And so, for example, Sanjay, what are you expecting for what investor ready means for our tech founders listening to the podcast?
I think what AI does make possible is the ability to gradually build your engineering team in a way that you couldn't before. So you don't need as large of a check. You might not even need a multi-million dollar check. You might need, 50 to $100,000 a month for a while. So I see a shift in the industry, which, my investor group that we're working with, we're talking about and thinking about giving money instead of as a chunk, by giving it monthly or quarterly. And that way you just want to do one thing, like, hey, I just want to advertise, or I just want to hire two engineers. And that doesn't take $4 million. That takes, I just need 10, $20,000 a month for a little while until this starts working. And I think we're going to see a model toward that kind of cash flow venture
Mhm.
that has never existed before. So that's emerging. People are talking about it. I haven't seen a lot of deals yet, but I've seen a lot of interest in it. And so, I mean, advice to VCs is really that entrepreneurs don't, they don't need you as much as they used to, even a few years ago. And they've got to figure out a way to invest these smaller checks. I mean, it's still, I mean, a lot of big companies today started with a small check. Oh, that's only a couple $1 million. Yeah, you want to write a bigger check. It's a better lifestyle. It's better to, be on three boards than 30, but investors are gonna have to find like a new way of doing things where their time can be spread out with companies that, really we're accepting like a traditional Series A, right? Not a modern Series A, but a traditional Series A was only a couple $1 million. So we'll have to kind of go back to that. And these big seed rounds, big Series A, they work sometimes, but there's not enough deal flow for the investors to do that all the time. There's more investors than companies
So,
for those deals.
yeah. And then, so regarding the revolutions, right? I remember we have the steam revolution, and I think
Mhm.
that in internet, the telephone, it was a revolution. I think when internet came along, it was also a revolution. I don't think that the social media was a revolution. The social media was maybe an advance of this technology, like the internet, so emails, the social media, and tech. Always there is a flavor of the day. So we have social media, we have emails, then we have NFT, then we have blockchain, then we have um, so many different flavors all day. So every day there is a new tech. And Sanjay, do you think that AI is the new flavor of the day and it's gonna vanish,
No, I
or
think
now
it's
we're in front of a new revolution, like when we have internet. So probably the second tech revolution, in my opinion, the first one was the internet. Do you think that this one is the second revolution, or this is just a flavor of the day?
no, it's actually something else. It's actually an age. So humanity goes through ages. The prehistoric age, the agricultural age, we went to the industrial age, then the information age. We're now in the experiential age. The way I define an age, or the way it's typically defined, is when half the economy is using a certain type of technology or concept, right? So at one point, half of the economy was agricultural. That shifted. Half the economy became industrial. That shifted. Half the economy became information. That shifted. Half the economy became experiential. So we're in the experiential age today. So social media is just part of the experiential age. And we're entering the agentic age. So at some point, half of the economy, half of transactional value in the world will be agentic in nature in some way. Like today, you buy a product, most of what you pay is not for the actual mechanical, substance of the product or the materials or what it does. It's about the brand, how it makes you feel,
The
the
experience. It's about the
the experience.
experience.
Exactly. So when you're consuming social media, you're just consuming an experiential product where very little of it is the actual device it's on, most, or even an iPhone, right? An iPhone is experiential. Like, yes, it makes calls, yes, it shows you pictures, but it's really more, much more than that. I mean, the part of your iPhone that, like, I think I bought we bought a burner phone for someone who didn't have a US phone. And so a touchscreen phone, the actual value of a touchscreen phone is only like 40, $50. All right, so why do we spend $1,000 on an iPhone or Samsung Android phone or more if it's a folding? Because we want that experience, right? So most of the value is experiential in the entire economy, not just phones. So what we'll shift to next is that having an agent, which is like a human employee, AI employee, a human-like AI employee, will be part of the value. You'll pay more for brands that provide you with an experiential agent than brands that don't. So if someone doesn't have an AI agent, their value of their product or cost that they can charge will be much less than someone who does. Like like I have I have a Tesla, right? So my Tesla, it drives itself and it, I can talk to it. So those are what define that product, right? Like if it didn't do those things, I wouldn't buy a Tesla. I wouldn't just buy an electric car that I still have to drive and I can't talk to and all these things. So the agentic nature, the AI and what does agentic even mean? It's really just the word agency. When you sell a house, you hire a real estate agent, right? You need insurance, you have insurance agent. So we already have agents in our economy. But when the majority of the economy is AI agents, will have entered the agentic era. Now, the thing about that is every age is shorter and shorter. So the prehistoric age was very, very long. Agricultural age was only a few thousand years. Industrial age has only been a few hundred years. Information age has only been a few decades. I mean, we're probably more than a decade, but yeah, the experiential age has been roughly 2 decades now, and now we're shifting to yet another age. The next one may only be a few years, so it's just getting faster and faster. We don't know how long the agentic age will last. It may not be decades anymore. It may be less than a decade.
Sanjay, someone's in love with our conversation. How people find you, how this process work.
Yeah, my name is Sanjay Bhatia. You can find me on LinkedIn or email me at Sanjay, Sanjay, at Runday, Runday.ai. Sanjay at Runday.ai. Please get in touch.
And then how they can find more about your company? What they have to
Yeah, just
visit?
go to the website. You can talk to our agent on our website and just
Oh
book
wow,
a
you have
time.
an agent. You have an AI agent in your website. That's fantastic. Yes.
Well, the best part about it is one thing we do for our customers is we put agents on their website as well.
Oh
And
wow.
so the consumer is going to want something like a chat GPT or super grok type of experience. And we think every brand and every website will need that at some point. So we started with ourselves, and then our technology like on your website. So there's a 24/7 product expert on your brand, always available to serve your customers.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for attending the podcast. And for all of you following Unstoppable, see you in our next episode. Our brave entrepreneur like Sanjay, brave that will achieve the first million. Bye for now.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.